welcome to this joyful celebration of two of our beloved ancestors. Good? Those two ancestors are Aaron and Hilda and Hilda Ratner. Family and friends are gathered here to help us remember their lives. And together with the artist who created the mosaic, we will dedicate this beautiful piece of art that you passed on your way into the building. This long-planned, long-awaited artwork is a reminder of the gifts that Aaron and Hilda's lives were to their family and friends, this congregation, and the wider communities of which they were and we are a part. Let's begin this sacred time together, as we always do, by lighting our chalice, which Kathy Hiller will do. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition, to our ancestors, and to each other.
Good morning. Before I begin, let me say, isn't it great to be sitting in this wonderful sanctuary again, even though it's a little warm? You guys are a sight for sore eyes. I am Dan Hiller, son of Aaron Hiller and Hilda. My wife and I, Kathy, have been longtime church members, and I am currently on the board of directors. On behalf of my family and the church, I want to thank you for coming today to our installation ceremony for our magnificent mosaic created by Sherry Hunter. Our program event tells the larger story of how our mosaic came to be, so I won't retell that part of the story. Instead, we want this event today to not just formally install the mosaic, but to recognize Aaron and Hilda and their extended church family, some of whom are here today. Hilda and Aaron had many years of church involvement in different and distinct ways. Those were remarkable and transformative years for our church, and both of them, along with the many people who are here today, were deeply influential in helping to create a vibrant community that we have today. We have invited some of their friends to speak, not only about how the mosaic came to be, but also about Aaron and Hilda and the times they lived. Hilda loved colorful artwork and had wanted something beautiful on that wall outside the fellowship door where it is located. And while I know that Hilda was frustrated that the artwork she wanted for the church that they loved so much was not completed in her lifetime, I love it that the mosaic honors them both, and I know they would both be very pleased and amazed with the mosaic that so beautifully complements our church. I also want to thank the Endowment Trust for commissioning the piece, and thank those who recognize that the artwork should honor them both. A special thanks to Sherry D. Giovanna and Trigg for helping us put this program together, and to Brenda Stein, who recommended Sherry Hunter. Finally, on behalf of everyone, I want to thank Sherry for taking the time necessary to create this magnificent piece of art. Sherry Hunter is a mosaic artist from the Bell Buckle area. She is a mixed media and community artist creating artwork that people can interact with. Many of her creations are found outside or around public buildings, including the dragons of Dragon Park and the colorful catfish you see around town. Sherry used her wit and creativity to research Aaron and Hilda, who Aaron and Hilda were, and then used that knowledge to create a mosaic that captured the essence of them. The mosaic will be looked upon by our congregants, visitors, and religious education students who will not only better understand some of the important components of our UU faith, but better appreciate the joy of being swept up into a beautiful piece of art that is so upbeat, hopeful, and optimistic. So without further ado, let me present Sherry Warner Hunter.
Thank you, Dan. I so appreciate the interaction I've had with Dan in helping to fill in the gaps, because obviously I did not know Hilda and Aaron. So I relied on information and emails and past images to help feed the imagery that was developed for the piece. I also want to take the time to thank Brenda Stein, who recommended me for this project many years ago. I'm glad it has come at this point in time, that it finally came together and was completed. With the information I had gathered about Hilda and Aaron, I wanted to represent them both. So at the top, with the DNA strains, I wanted to acknowledge Hilda's work at Vanderbilt Microbiology Lab. I also understand that Aaron was an avid reader and loved to share his library. I was told that by friends of his, and was provided with a reading list of some of his favorites. So the titles on the books hold personal meaning to his own interests. But I know together they loved nature. They loved being outside and flowers. And of course, Hilda loved living on Shies Hill. So wanted to incorporate the rolling hills of Tennessee along with wildflowers. Originally, I thought there was going to be another mix, but I sort of kept it to the three: the daylily, the bachelor button, and then while you might think that the flowers would be Queen Anne's lace, they're actually hemlock, which looks very close except has a burgundy stem. So I incorporated the hemlock, as they were both members of the Hemlock Society. So with the chalice as the forefront image, and such a meaningful object for the Unitarian Universalist Church, I wanted to make sure that I had it to be a unique form and also had a flame that was full of life. And within that, I've added a symbol that is sometimes used to represent free thinking in the little figurative, if you look within the frame in the round circle at the top. So while this is new territory for me, and hopefully I got it right, I was trying to combine a lot of the feelings that I was getting from the people I was communicating with. I believe that there's going to be a slideshow, that there is a slideshow out in the lobby, and I've tried to provide some of the process of taking the materials and working them into the mosaic, because each and every one of these colors started out as a commercially produced 8-inch tile. So things were cut by saw, nipped by hand, and every single piece has been sanded, so you can rub your hands over it, and it's a nice, soft, tactile experience as well. The only difference there are the hemlock flowers, and that's made with a material called millefiori, which means million flowers. So it's a glass process pulled out in a thin strand and then cut into little pieces. And I worked those in so that they created the flowerets of the hemlock flower. I was very honored to be selected for this project. I know this is a couple that's very near and dear to your hearts and significant to this organization. And I always take these projects as a creative gift to be able to represent those powerful feelings in a permanent piece of art. And I want to thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. In addition to the piece we have here, there is a gorgeous, I think you call it a lizard. Her name is Lizzie, just outside the Parthenon, and the kids love to play on Lizzie. In addition to the dragons in the Dragon Park, you're well represented in Nashville. I'm Candy Toller, and I'm so glad to see all of you too. It's been a long time since I've been in this church. And I am here representing the Endowment Trust, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Endowment Trust. I think it was established in 1984. Morrison might be able to, wherever he is, might be able to correct that, because he probably worked on the original language. It's a separate legal entity from the first UU, and it has its own bylaws. And the purpose is to benefit the church. There are 5 trustees elected, and several of them are here. Linda Derrico is just going off, and Pat Lynch is just coming on, and Lori is our chair, and Vicki is somewhere in here. Yes. We're glad to have you here. The trust is funded by contributions in honor of and memory of individuals. Because they were so loved by this church, many gifts were made in honor of both Aaron and Hilda, and Hilda made a generous bequest to the trust upon her death in 2016. God, it seems like so long ago, doesn't it? The Mosaic Art Project has been a long time in the making, and as Dan's explanation indicates in the handout, it was well worth it. It's gorgeous. And now I'm going to put on a proverbial different hat and tell you some things that I remember about Aaron and Hilda. I met Aaron at my first UU church retreat in 1977. Phil Ryan was there because we rode up together. You can ask me about that in the social area afterwards. I remember Hilda's ready smile and willingness to help. And she helped me get my job at Vanderbilt many, many years ago because of her connections at Vanderbilt. I remember Aaron's sense of humor. And he's always working overtime on that, and it's usually off color, which makes it more fun. I remember Hilda's commitment to First UU. She was the treasurer here for, it seems like a gazillion years, and she chaired stewardship for so many years, too. She was always busy with church activities. I remember Aaron's soup on Sunday morning. Any of you remember eating Aaron's soup after church on Sunday morning? Yes. Hilda loved the outdoors, as Sherry mentioned, and she loved her walks at Radnor Lake. I think Jane took her to Radnor Lake many times. And does anybody remember what Aaron's email address was? Skeptic, yes. Does that not fit him? Skeptic. And I remember Hilda's art collection. She traveled all over the world, and she had the most interesting pieces of art in her house on Shies Hill. I'm sure Kathy Bryant will say some more about that in a few minutes. And then there's Aaron's favorite ham. Now, you may recall that Aaron was Jewish. It ain't fitting to eat ham if you're Jewish. But that didn't matter to Aaron because Bob Day cooked the best ham Aaron had ever eaten. And then there was Aaron and Hilda's wedding in this sanctuary, which was a wonderful affair. What a fun event. Okay, I've started us off with a few of my memories. And now I'm going to turn it over to John Harkey, who's going to share some of his, and then we'll turn it over to Kathy Bryant, who lived in the house that Hilda lived in for many years. So, John, I think did you follow Hilda as treasurer of the church?
I don't know. I was treasurer at some point.
Okay. Well, I know you were treasurer, and I thought it seemed like it was about that time. So let me turn it over to John Harkey, a longtime member of the church.
Since this looks like a Fox and Friends crowd, I'm going to be careful in what I say, okay? Okay, I feel honored today to speak about Aaron and Hilda Ratner and their gift to the church. The mural is stunning in its beauty and in what it represents. I view the mural as an offer to open our mind to the humanist quest for a meaningful life. And the next few items may have mistakes in them because I'm doing it from memory. Hilda and Aaron both grew up Jewish, but became UUs at some point. I think I can also safely say that both Aaron and Hilda saw themselves as humanists, a view that we humans set our own course without guidance from a God. While humanity has a lot of potential for foibles, by observing our world carefully and with help from our friends and books highlighted in the mural, we can determine for ourselves what the good is and pursue it. Only one page, don't worry. These books bring humanism to the reader, in some cases by describing the opposite, in some cases through humor, and in some cases via a scientific description of reality as we understand it. I think both Aaron and Hilda understand how badly things can run off the rails, but they both were optimistic and thought we could navigate our way through our lives in a meaningful way, especially after they found each other. They could do that. Aaron was a young man, age 21, when we declared war on Japan, Germany, and Italy. He understood the evil of Hitler and his legions and immediately volunteered to serve. He joined the Army Air Corps and trained as a gunner, I think, in B-24s, flying out of North Africa and later Italy. His job was to protect the bomber from German fighters as his aircraft flew into Germany to bomb the Ploesti oil fields. The last two books capture that experience for him, Catch-22 and The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Has everybody here read Catch-22? I don't have to explain it, right? Okay, good. You know what Catch-22 was. That's a big organization. It looks like everything is going your way, and then Catch-22 comes along and spoils it all. So Aaron got involved with the internet at his older age, this was mentioned earlier, identifying himself in the chat rooms as skeptic. In addition to enjoying skewering people in the chat rooms about religious topics, he also delivered a sermon each year from the pulpit, or nearly every year. The Jefferson Bible, the Grand Inquisitor, and the books by Darwin are representative of Aaron's own hits from the pulpit against religious nonsense and religious harm. Combining Hawking with Darwin, the need for religious filling in the gaps went away, and Aaron liked to make that point. Hilda didn't delve so much into the philosophy of science. Instead, she was a scientist managing a research lab at Vanderbilt. I got to know Hilda over the years as a clear-eyed realist who gave heart and soul to the church in a variety of ways: search committee, treasurer, board chair, major gifts, and as a stalwart president during hard times. The chalice and the books scattered below are fitting to tribute to both of them.
Well, hey, I'm Kathy Bryan. I was the closest thing Hilda had to a daughter. Aaron had plenty of kids, but Hilda didn't have any. So much so that she took me all over the world with her and practically left me her house. I did have to pay a few dollars, but not much. And I can't do her in 25 words or less, really. She was so unique that if you would sit in her presence, no matter who you were, you would feel loved. She was capable of making you feel so like she was so attentive that no matter what I told her, and I told her some really bad stuff, she would say, "What will be, will be," or one of her aphorisms. She had a bunch of them. And she meant it. So I can't do all my memories. And of course, living in the house off and on for 21 years, I have even more, of both of them. We've sold the house, partly because we moved, and also partly because we were tired of renting it, and also because there's a transition here, and I think this event is part of that transition. For me, Hilda will never be gone, and even though she lived past her stroke, I was in Africa when she had it, and so got back a little bit late and felt like, oh my God, what if she leaves? But she didn't. She stayed for quite a long while, I think 15 years, something like that. And Dan and Kathy took her back and forth to the doctor, like I had done before John and I went on vacation for 14 years. And also Jane took her. So there were a lot of people who helped her. And it's because she really convinced us that we were important. And my own parents didn't really do that, but Hilda did. So to me, she was always my true mother, although she didn't like that because she thought it made her sound old. But as we've all aged, and some of us have started having infirmities, I look back often over dinner group So dinner group was a group of people. I wasn't in the original crowd, which included Aaron and Hilda and Jean Butler and Lonita Newbro and Diane Momsley and a couple of other people that passed out. So they started every two days a week. So I think it was Tuesday and Thursday, eating dinner together. And then it evolved. Some of those people left or moved. And then everybody started to couple up. So I coupled up with Doug Polk, who's buried right there, with Aaron. And that's how I got into dinner group. But I was a vegetarian, so of course I didn't have anything to eat. So the first dinner group I went to, John was making hamburgers. And I said, did nobody tell you I was a vegetarian? He said, well, you can eat the tomato and the lettuce. Okay, great. So I later married him because he was so savvy. Anyway, dinner group went on for 20-something years until people started to move. Well, I forgot the baby period. So in the 80s, we had the baby period. Everybody who used to be single now had babies. And I remember Aaron, we were sitting on the patio of the house on Shies Hill, and I think there were 3 women nursing. And he looked at me and he said, this is so not dinner group. So anyway, the kids all grew up and had their own kids. And then when Aaron died, which has been 22 years, 24 years, I was in California with my kids, so I took a couple of Aaron things to throw and read some of the poems that John's about to read to you for me, because I don't see very well and I don't remember writing these things. No telling what they say. And so in the end, Aaron told me not long before his stroke that he didn't think he was going to make it very far. We went to Hilton Head, I think, and he was having trouble walking. And he said, now he had had a stroke in Mexico at one point. So, his strokes came and went. And he said, I don't think I'm going to make it. And he said, but you are. So I always think of that. John. No,
I'm going to help you down?
no,
Okay.
I want to stand here.
All right.
He's still doing it.
Still doing what?
Giving me shit.
Yeah. 47 years ago, I walked into this sanctuary, stood in the back, and I looked out and I went, this is a heating and air conditioning nightmare. It has not changed, my very first thought. But little did I know then the friends that I would make, the people I would get to know, and it is truly nice to look out and see the faces of old friends here. 2 of the people I was most fortunate to be friends with were Hilda Ratner and Aaron and Hilda. I tried to look at Aaron as the father that I'd never quite had, because my dad died when I was a young teenager. And he was, but he was more than that. He was a friend and a mentor and a wise man and an imp. He was a great imp. And that's I tried to emulate that. I could never be an Aaron. But enough said. And Kathy writes way better than I talk. So we have 2 pieces that she wrote here. One is for dinner group, and it's titled, My Tribe. Many years ago, adults circled free, forming a spray of single hat feathers, eating and drinking on fortnights together, extending their family, celebrating new weddings, deaths, births, reformed between the vast repasts, males and females, older and younger, friends in present and gathering pasts. Shrimp and pork, vegetarian and alcoholic, kosher, microbiotic to exotic fare, drinking wine, no wine, and fancy waters. cares, and food broken and shared. Now, more than 2 decades later, we form a richer circle around a rounder table, witnesses to each other's lives and lovers, grown fat from storing dinner groups of fables. Still meeting and eating on Thursday nights, prime time played in the newfound clan, turning the best of human quilts, sewn minute to minute, woven in the fruit of many dinnered learning. The next one I hope I can get through without breaking up. But Kathy wrote this and we read it at Aaron's memorial. It's titled Losing Aaron. Aaron, a prince of intricacy, brain and wit like quicksilver, he turned phrases or game pieces with speed and grace, impishly winking and glowing with fun. A prophet of humanism, deep-rooted in religious contexts, his written words moved away from Brother Moses' tablets into daily newspaper tableaus. A joy for lifer, the infectious tickles of his humor still pass back and forth, all cast from the green nets of his intellect, the bricked bonds of his intimacies. A professor of living, a lover of history and jokes, he reached across the internet through culture and space, touching thousands of fellow explorers. A poet of politics. A learned rabbi called him brilliant. A tough newswoman cried to learn we'd no longer hear or read his latest spiritual jeremiad. This man who'd flown 50 war missions and lost his left ear's hearing could still hear the sound of a child thinking or a society reaching for meanings. This man who could hum most operas or recite lyrics from Jefferson or Genesis could still sing the praises of his last day's reading or his wife and friends. This man's personal renaissance had made him actor, seller, thinker, and writer, going beyond his village, beyond his tribes, beyond his own beginnings. This man, propelled by language, worshipped at the altar of inquiry, his mind and heart open to life's absurd and unexpected data and delights. This man's viewpoints, from skeptic wordsmith to aging wunderkind, made us laugh and wonder at the interwoven webs of humanity we share. Aaron's looks, a jester smiling, the scholar of Scrabble, the knight of opinion. Aaron's voice, an echo even now, sounding like Schubert's suites in all of us. This spring remembers, renews its yellow tulips and softball greens. No knots end. The influence of this one man's texts and hugs never end, their warp and strength connecting us to the humans left. No gathering ends, the celebrations he taught us with contexts and conversations. No relations end, his crayon-colored familial and filial fabrics woven with his fingers, cupped hands giving us all the sips of his life and love. Aaron's still here, in turns of notes and arguments, grinning at us for 6 o'clock suppers or bites of sweets. Aaron's still here, as long as we are still here, as long as his words and ways resound, bound between the covers and pages of our minds.
I think other members of dinner group might want to say something because we didn't quite crack it.
Good morning. I'm Phil Ryan. I too was a member of the dinner group. I came, pardon? Man, Aaron's jokes, they were the best. They were the best. But I am a homeboy of Madison, Tennessee, working class kid who, when universities were cheaper, you know, I graduated from Middle Tennessee State University and came in 1976 to this church. One of my professors in political science department had said, Jim Sasser, who was our senator at that time, had better get a different religion, you know, because he was a Unitarian. Can you imagine having a Unitarian as a senator in Tennessee, and now that we have Marsha Blackburn? You know, it's like, oh, it just makes your head spin how far we've dropped. But anyway, sorry. So anyway, I came here in '76, and the UU was my real graduate education, and Aaron was one of my major professors, if not my mentor. I mean, he was so he was a child of the Lower East Side, and I was a child of Madison, Tennessee, working class Southern redneck. The UU in general, and Aaron in particular, just opened my mind to a much, much bigger world of which you can ask my wife, Meredith, I mention his name frequently, thinking about something that reminds me of him to this day. I loved Hilda as well. What a sweet and smart lady she was, free with her advice to this rough-edged kid that I was when I came here. And Aaron, though, helped make me the person that I am today. And the good stuff is from Aaron.
Hi, my name is Jeff Stein. We've heard how much both Hilda and Aaron were role models for so many of us. When I first came to the church, 1990, one of my first REs is where I was introduced to both Hilda and Aaron. And Aaron had apparently just had an operation. I think it was in his heart. I don't know. Dan would know. But it was at one of my first religious Wednesday night RE meetings in the Morgan House. And Hilda was sitting with Aaron in his wheelchair up right close to the speaker. And I think it was because Aaron was also wanting to hear. But it's the first time I was introduced to him as his moniker online as skeptic. I don't know, one of the things that most impressed me about him is that at his age and having some of the conditions that he had, he was already online in a chat group with right-wing people that he just liked to twist and twist. And he was not only that in this RE, he was challenging the speaker. So it is one of the things that made me say, this is my place. I like this guy. And so I started to learn more and more about him. Am I talking too loud? No, okay. More and more about him, and discovered that not only he was writing all sorts of letters in the Tennessean, for which he got awards because they were so pointed, and that he was into acting. And I'm saying, what's this guy's background? A shoe company. And I'm just so amazed at this guy. And he truly became a model for my own aging in some respects. And as time went on, I saw him perform in the Circle Players. I saw him perform at the JCC with their dramatic stuff. He even, shortly before his death, strangely enough, was doing commercials for a heart medication, I think it was. If it wasn't a heart medication, it was something having to do with the heart, at how he had survived and done all of this stuff. I don't, clearly with commercials. But anyway, I just he meant so much to me in terms of a model, the role model that you're hearing here. And Hilda too. I just remember the engagements I had with Hilda. And particularly, they were always going on these elder hostel. I used to teach some elder hostel workshops, but they wanted to go abroad. They wanted to go elsewhere. And they were continually on these elder hostel trips, learning. That's what they did. They learned. And And I asked Hilda, I said, how do you, it's amazing you do this. And she says, well, some of us got to do it, and that was her approach. So I just wanted to say, I want to thank both of them and for their engagement and their role modeling that they provided me.
I'm sorry. I got cat hair in here. I'm breathing cat hair. I'll do my best. Eva Close. Every time I had a chance to sit with Hilda, if the choir wasn't on stage or in a specific part, we did. Aaron was a different story. Aaron had a record. Jeff mentioned it. I think he had like 1 gazillion 3-star letters to the Tennessean. I only had 7. Of the 7 banquets I was invited to, I attended 4. And for whatever reason, he and I were not sat at the same table. But we found a way to sneak and sit together and have jokes and laughs and fun. And it was just a great memory. And I want to say thank you to the artist and to the endowment committee and everybody else involved with this fabulous thingy today. And I'm sorry about the cat hair.
I'm Dave Morrison. A lot of you don't know me, but I was here at the time when, well, let me just start this. In 1975, I had lived here a year, and I came to this church because a friend of mine named Charlie Akers, who I worked with in the state legislative council, told me that one of his psychology professors was going to give a talk at the church on Plato's dialogues, or on Plato. And being a philosophy minor, I really wanted to see someone reconcile Platonic doctrine with Christianity. Fortunately, Dick Blanton didn't even bother to try, and I knew I found a place that I could probably go and attend. Aaron Hiller, was divorced from law school. My wife decided she didn't like lawyers in general and me in particular about 4 years into law school, which, by the way, is very common. It's like 40% divorce rate in law school. I moved to Nashville, and I had just rented an apartment over on Fairfax Avenue, and I had a separate bedroom. And somebody invited me about the second week I went to the church, why don't you come to this dinner group we're forming? We have these dinners for 8, and we're forming this little group, and we'd like for you to come. And I went and met Aaron, and Hilda was there. They were not together, but Gene Butler, Jim Graham, Phil was later. But this group stayed together for 27 years. Now, to put it in some perspective, when I joined this fellowship, I know because I got involved with the pledging at that time, and there were 110 pledging units. That's families and so forth. The dinner group, for a long time, effectively ran major portions of this church. I mean, the president was a member of the dinner group. Hilda was the treasurer. I mean, it literally, the auction was a dinner group function. Initially, I mean, a lot of the bricks of this fellowship were built by the dinner group. And so you have to understand what an integral part it was to the congregation. Aaron and Hilda are literally parts of the stones of this fellowship. They built this hall. Some of the people, Dick Blanton was a stonemason, and he helped build these columns. Years later, in the wintertime, if you stood at this pulpit, it was on this concrete floor. It didn't have this riser under it then. We measured the temperature on a Sunday morning at 9:30 at 38 degrees. And something had to be done. Now, this ceiling was always in the plans. But at that time, there was nothing but steel girders and tectum, which is the fabric that was the bottom of the roof, okay? And so it was very cold in here. And so we came up with a plan and put in this ceiling. It cost $50,000 to do that and build this and put in the fans and to put in a new heating unit. Now, I think the heating unit came later. But suffice to say, there was such turmoil, it almost didn't pass. But I was the president at that time. And so basically, we passed that. Aaron was the guy who explained things. Aaron was, I lived with Aaron for 3.5 years. We had shared a house on Parthenon, actually bought the house together. And he was the consummate salesman. I think of Willie Loman every time I think of Aaron. He literally is, except Willie Loman lost. Aaron Hiller never lost. He was without question the best salesman I ever met in my life. He was also told some of the funniest jokes you will ever hear, but you're not going to hear them from this pulpit. I've sort of sworn to myself I was not going to tarnish his reputation by telling any of them. After, at the service, I'll be glad to share some of them, especially about what happened at Standing Stone with Candy and when they first met. Suffice to say, Hilda and Aaron got together during that dinner group period of time, and they literally were a match made, and he would never do anything. He might do something to hack her off inadvertently, but he would do everything in his power to fix it. And that's an unusual circumstance for Aaron because they got along. And Hilda was not a difficult person to get along with. Aaron and I were consummate slobs. The only reason we ever had to clean up the house was to have a party. So that's why we had so many parties. That was the only excuse we had. Aaron would leave somebody reminded me of this when I came today, little sayings up on the wall, little philosophical sayings. In every room, there was a little saying up on the wall. In addition, if it was wintertime, he liked to make chopped liver, 3 or 4 pounds of it. Now, Unitarians are pretty, equanimous about religious things and foods and so forth, but they don't generally, even in a party, eat 3.5 pounds of chopped liver. So the chopped liver remainder would be in the back of the refrigerator for maybe 6 months. And I would eventually go back in there, getting ready for another party, and say, what is this? It's been here forever. Take it out and open it up, and it was like napalm. It was the most, literally, it's an aluminum pan, and it's eating holes in the bottom of the pan. So Aaron was not without fault. Trust me, he was not. But he was, the best thing I can say about both of them, they had challenges in life. Aaron did 50 missions as a B-24 waist gunner. Nobody in his plane ever got a scratch. Everybody around them died. Thousands of people. On one raid he did at Schweinfurt, I'm informed, 40% of a 1,000 plane raid didn't come home. 4,000 people. He went through that. Now, the way he went through that is when he was a child, he would go to the Met in New York because he loved opera. Now, he was a high school graduate, but he loved opera. And they would let you in the Met after intermission if you were quiet and agreed not to talk. They would let kids in to listen to it, and he began to love Verdi. He would loved it under any circumstances. And so he loved it so much, he learned archaic operatic Italian. So when he was stationed in Italy 20 years later, or 10 years later, he was the only one in his group of men who could talk up the Italian girls. So all of the guys followed him around whenever they went to town. That gives you as good a picture of Aaron Hiller as anybody. Now, he was married at the time, and he was very faithful to his wife. When he came home, she found out she had found somebody else, so he divorced, moved to California, and met Phyllis, and he started selling handkerchiefs door to door. From that, he owned a shoe store in Petaluma, California in 1957, and as he put it, lost his shirt. He bought 300,000 pairs of Japanese plastic women's shoes and then went into a recession. And as he put it, I believe, we ate plastic women's shoes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for about 2 years, and I sold the store and eventually took a job as the national sales manager for Charm Step Shoes at Maxie Jarman's little shop out here at Zenesco. He even sold life insurance. The one story I will tell you is he was not all fun and games. He could be very serious, especially about money. I will tell you a story about that if you ask me when we get done. I won't make this too long. His lesson to me, and Hilda's lesson to me, is attitude. They never, with all the challenges of life, Hilda in a wheelchair for 10 years, Aaron with 3-4 strokes. He was nauseated for 3 years of his life. His middle ear was affected by his second stroke, and he had nausea for 3 years. In 3 years, he was doing contra dancing again. He never let things get him down. He always had a smile and was, let's get on with tomorrow. They were great people. I think the memorial is a wonderful tribute. It's really accurate, and I think they would appreciate it mightily. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your memories of this couple who so richly have blessed the world and the lives of so many of you here today. If you are familiar with our customary words written by Elizabeth Zell Jones, you might wish to join me in extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. One note before our parting words: we hope that you will stay and look at the slideshow in the social hall of the creation and installation of our beautiful new artwork and to talk with each other. If you'd like to step outside to view the mosaic again, I believe there's bottled water somewhere near those doors. Friends, beloveds, when we see our beautiful mosaic, we will be reminded of the ancestors whose legacies it honors. When we choose to bless the world, we will continue the legacies gifted to us by Aaron and Hilda. As long as we remember them, and even after that, as long as ours is a community faithful to our shared values, Aaron, who's described so aptly as a professor of living, Aaron's love of learning and the search for the good, and Hilda's commitment to the disciplines and the beauties of scientific discovery, the fellowship of the dinner group, and the never-ending love of learning will remain alive in our world. In benediction, I leave you with a few words from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith. I'm going to add in the life of the dinner group, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility, waiting. Friends, this service is over. May our service continue, inspired by the legacies of curiosity and dedication to community that we have inherited, and renewed in the hope of the possibilities awaiting us. May it be so.